Polling stations are open. South Koreans are casting their ballots early for next week's general election. The two-day early voting period runs through Saturday. The Federal Reserve rolls out a fresh $2.3 trillion package of loans that includes even more support for small businesses and consumers, as well as for states, cities, and municipalities. Plus, OPEC and its allies agreed to a 10 million barrel a day production cut in May and in June as the coronavirus pandemic saps global demand for oil. South Korea has started 2 days of early voting for the April 15th general election. The National Election Commission says eligible voters can visit their local polling stations between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. Now, the voter turnout as of 9 a.m. this morning, just 3 hours in, has been counted at 1.51%, which is the highest percentage ever recorded for during that time period of early voting here in South Korea. By region, Jeollanam-do province had the highest voter turnout, while the city of Daegu had the lowest. And at your polling stations, after presenting a valid ID, voters will receive 2 ballot papers, one to pick candidates for their specific districts and another to choose candidates under the nationwide proportional representation system. With this year's election coming as the country battles the COVID-19 outbreak, voters are required to wear masks and gloves, and their temperatures will be checked. And they also need to stay at least a meter apart when in line and refrain from talking inside polling stations. And President Moon Jae-in and the First Lady Kim Jong-suk cast their ballots this morning for the general elections as well. They voted early at a local community center near the presidential office of Cheongwadae. Now, the nation's first couple also voted early during the 2018 local elections. The top office said the move was aimed at encouraging the South Korean public to turn out to vote. Shifting focus, it's been over 100 days since China alerted the World Health Organization about the presence of a mysterious virus in the city of Wuhan. Now, just over 3 months later, over 1.5 million people have been infected, and the world's reported death toll is edging ever closer to 100,000. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
On December 31st, 2019, China notified the WHO about a new virus that had been sweeping through the central city of Wuhan. That once mysterious virus was COVID-19. It has since infected more than 1.5 million people worldwide and has taken the lives of over 94,000. Even more shocking is the speed at which the virus spreads, jumping from 500,000 confirmed cases to 1.5 million in just 2 weeks. In recent weeks, Europe has become the epicenter, with countries like Spain, Italy, and France among the hardest hit. A sudden surge in the past week pushed Spain's infection total past 150,000, as well as more than 15,000 deaths. Italy is still struggling, having the highest reported death toll in the world at over 18,000, and France's daily death toll is second only to the U.S. With over 450,000 confirmed cases, the United States has the most reported infections by far. And with over 1,000 deaths reported each day, the U.S. may soon surpass Italy as the country with the most COVID-19 deaths in the world. With the spread continuing and no telling how much higher the numbers will go, researchers continue to work around the clock for a vaccine that may finally banish the world of this deadly virus. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The World Health Organization has proposed discussing ways to narrow the gap between different countries regarding how they deal with the COVID-19 pandemic when the agency's Health Assembly meets in May. During a video conference on Thursday, the WHO's Director General said the world has witnessed the damage the virus can do to wealthy countries, but have yet to see the disaster within more vulnerable nations. He also stressed the importance of preparing all countries with countermeasure capabilities to infectious diseases as a whole, not just COVID-19, adding that other viruses will pop up even after the coronavirus pandemic is over. The Federal Reserve is taking additional moves to support the American economy, which has been handcuffed due to tough coronavirus containment measures, saying that the institution is committed to providing as much support as possible. The Fed's chair insists the U.S. economy will rebound once the virus is under control. Our Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
The Federal Reserve on Thursday rolled out a massive $2.3 trillion plan to stabilize the U.S. economy amid the coronavirus pandemic. The Fed said in a statement that the move is aimed at keeping markets functioning and supporting the economy, which has been hit hard by the rapid spread of the coronavirus. The move also came after Washington reported that 6.6 million new jobless claims were filed just last week. The Fed's measures include major business lending programs, as well as other market intervention initiatives, such as plans to buy corporate bonds and commercial mortgage-backed securities. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell stressed the role of the central bank is to provide as much relief and stability as possible during such dark times.
We are deploying these lending powers to an unprecedented extent, enabled in large part by the financial backing from the Congress and the Treasury. We will continue to use these powers forcefully, proactively, and aggressively until we're confident that we are solidly on the road to recovery.
Speaking in a webcast from the Brookings Institution, he also explained that the U.S. economy will rebound as soon as the virus is fully under control.
When the virus does run its course and it's safe to go back to work and safe for businesses to open, then we would expect there to be a fairly quick rebound as people do go back to work and start resuming normal levels of economic activity. I think most people expect that to happen in the second half of this year after the second quarter, which of course ends on June 30.
Nevertheless, he also hinted that economic growth for the second quarter would be very weak with a high level of unemployment. Meanwhile, the IMF chief said Thursday that the COVID-19 pandemic will turn global economic growth, quote, sharply negative this year, describing the situation as the worst economic crisis the world faces since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Kristalina Georgieva also forecasts that the world will only see a partial recovery in 2021. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
OPEC and several other major oil producers, including Russia, agreed to a historic production cut of 10 million barrels a day for 2 months, starting from the month of May. Now, the drastic move comes as the coronavirus pandemic saps demand for crude oil, with almost the entire world not flying or driving. With the decision, the group will cut daily production by 10 million barrels in May and June, 8 million barrels from July through the end of the year, and 6 million barrels from January of 2021 through April of 2022. Despite the record cut, oil prices moved lower on Thursday as investors worried it would still not be enough to level out the drop in demand. President Moon Jae-in will be joining a video summit with the leaders of ASEAN, China, and Japan next week in a bid to tighten up cooperation on the COVID-19 pandemic. South Korea's National Security Council, during its weekly session on Thursday, said that Seoul had agreed to strengthen cooperation with ASEAN member nations through the ASEAN +3 video summit. Although the top office has yet to confirm the date, Vietnam's foreign ministry says the virtual summit will be held next Tuesday, the April 14th. And President Moon, speaking over phone last week with the Vietnamese Prime Minister, said it was very timely to arrange the virtual summit. Moving up to above the border, ahead of North Korea's 14th Supreme People's Assembly this Friday, the regime's leader Kim Jong-un oversaw troops conducting mortar firing exercises. North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported this morning on his activities, saying that without giving date or location of the drill. But given North Korean reports usually have a one-day lag, it is likely that Kim was overseeing the drills on Thursday. The speculation is rife that the regime will announce a reshuffle of its leadership's top brass during the Supreme People's Assembly, but no confirmation yet on whether the leader Kim Jong-un will show up for the event. The U.S. Department of Treasury has revised regulations on strengthening sanctions against North Korea. They reinforce blocking Pyongyang's access to funds that could be used to develop weapons of mass destruction. Our Kan Hyung-woo tells us more.
The U.S. Treasury Department has modified sanctions regulations against North Korea that emphasize restraining agencies that engage in financial transactions with the regime. The revisions do not impose more sanctions on Pyongyang, but strengthen the department's efforts to block the North's access to funds that could be used to develop its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. It's a follow-up measure to incorporate North Korea sanctions provisions in the latest National Defense Authorization Act, which was signed by President Trump in December 2019. Of particular note is the section titled the Otto Warmbier North Korea Sanctions and Enforcement Act of 2019. Warmbier was an American college student who died in 2017 after falling into a coma during a 17-month detention in North Korea. The Warmbier Act requires the U.S. president to designate anyone who knowingly engages in certain activities related to North Korea to screen who's subject to sanctions. It also obligates the Treasury Secretary to enforce sanctions on foreign financial institutions that deliberately provide significant financial services to individuals designated for their ties to North Korea. The sanctions put a ban or strict conditions on the opening or maintenance of correspond or payable through accounts in the United States. Also included in the Warmbier Act is a provision that requires the Treasury Secretary to block any American-owned or controlled institution outside the U.S. from engaging in any financial transactions with Pyongyang or sanctioned individuals. The new regulations go into effect on April 10th after they're published in the Federal Register. Kan Hyung-woo, Arirang News.
And K-pop phenomenon BTS has written another page into South Korea's music history. The boy band has become the biggest selling single K-pop music act in history in terms of global album sales. According to BTS's management agency, Big Hit Entertainment on Thursday, the band's accumulated album sales topped 20 million units as of the end of March. 7 of BTS's 14 albums have sold more than 1 million copies, including all 3 editions of the Love Yourself trilogy and the 2 Map of the Soul albums. The Seoul Metropolitan Government is providing 200 digital training robots to senior care centers in the capital. The Seoul Digital Foundation says the robots are connected to teaching apps, and they include basic training on how to use a smartphone and the KakaoTalk, South Korea's largest messenger application. Equipped with a speech recognition and response system, the robots can monitor what each elderly people does on the smartphone and give instant feedback.
Good morning. Temperatures will continue to be slightly cooler than the season norms in most parts of the country today, and wide gaps will persist between lows and highs, so dress accordingly to avoid catching a cold. And the dryness in the air shows no sign of easing up. Seoul has been under a dry weather warning for 10 straight days now, so be careful for the potential for fire. Now, there's a chance that parts of the East Coast could see light spreading rainfall during the day, and by the afternoon, temperatures will rise rapidly and will hover in the mid to upper teens, which are similar to yesterday. Korea's southern coast in Jeju will see light rain on Saturday with 5 to 20 millimeters of rainfall expected, and Jeju is actually expected to see showers into Sunday. Looking ahead, the weather looks promising for next week with big temperature gaps, and the air will remain dry, so be sure to moisturize your skin and drink enough water. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the globe.
And that's all the news we have at this hour, but we'll be back with South Korea's coronavirus daily briefing at 11 Korea time, so do join us again then. Thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.
안녕하세요. 심은경입니다. 대한민국